And it looks like we are live. Give me a second, guys. As you know, gotta let the stream breathe for just a minute. Get our Facebook groups in here to join us here on a wonderful Friday evening. Hopefully, everybody had a good week so far. It's been a pretty good week on my end. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode, Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. My name is Lance Sanderson. I'm your host, and joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, technical difficulties aside, trying to come into this. Sorry for coming a little bit late, guys. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Just curious what we're going to talk about. It's not like anything's happened over the last week involving the Broncos, so just absolutely nothing at all to discuss.
No, it's been pretty boring. Training camp starts next week. We don't have any news about Sean Payton, George Payton. Seriously, this week has been crazy, everybody. It's been a lot of fun. Obviously, the Jarrett Bell piece, the first one where he had Sean Payton talking about the suspension to Enyoma Owazarike, who was suspended for 1 full year for gambling on NFL games last season. That was a bombshell report, kind of some very noteworthy takeaways from that. But obviously the one that came out yesterday where he just torched the entire organization from top to bottom. Erick, you and I kind of talked privately about it a little bit, but I want your big time thoughts, man. What did you think about Sean Payton going to Jarrett Bell and really kind of just letting loose there for what seemingly was about an hour-long conversation with a guy from the national media?
Well, I mean, like, what he said isn't wrong. Like, the only thing that he did was wrong, but I get it, was his completely absolving Russell Wilson for any blame of last year, but I get it. Russell Wilson clearly has confidence issues, so it's good for him to defend his quarterback to try to help bring that confidence. Mm-hmm. I just wish he didn't walk back his comments today.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that 100%. If you're going to go out there and do something like that, and you're going to torch somebody from the top down, specifically Nathaniel Hackett, and then we can get into the president of the organization, the general manager, the head coach, the training, like everybody that he just threw under the bus for what happened last season. If you're going to do that, not to say that he rescinded some of those comments, because he really didn't. He acknowledged that it was probably a mistake to do that and he regrets doing that, but he didn't apologize or take anything that he said away. He's like, eventually I'll go talking to Robert Saleh and maybe to Nathaniel Hackett, kind of between us, and just make it right. As coaches should go, you should probably defend coaches and not really throw people under the bus like that. But if you're going to do it all of the way and stay in with it, and don't apologize for speaking the truth and speaking your mind. It's not a bad thing for you to go out and do that. It's not like you said anything super inflammatory that offends a whole bunch of people. You said the truth and people didn't like it. Wham, get over it, guys. Like, to me, going back and trying to walk it back was worse than what he actually did. And I applaud Sean Payton for what he said, because like you said, it's the truth, and sometimes the truth just hurts.
Yeah, and then I'm not one for, creating drama for storylines, and that's kind of what his comments did. I mean, his comments about the Jets, I think those were over the line, basically saying that we're going to see the same thing from the Jets this year because of Hard Knocks, when Hard Knocks was thrust upon them by the NFL. They didn't want Hard Knocks. They couldn't turn it down. So that was a little bit out there, and now there's pressure on him. The Broncos better beat the Jets, or else he just made himself a laughingstock for a while because of his comments about what he said. And then, of course, Jay Roper comes in and asks about it, discussing the whole video from the QB Collective tweet back out of Sean Payton hitting a bong. That video was released a long time ago. I mean, it's years old. It's 4 or 5 years old. It's actually him doing it. He's already answered questions about it. The Quarterback Collective, which includes a bunch of young quarterback gurus, so to speak, throughout the NFL, is part of the Quarterback Collective. One of them's Hackett. So of course they're going to sit there and come to his defense by releasing that video to try to, kind of, what's the right word here? Diminish the comments Sean Payton made. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. No big deal. Done and taken care of. It was just more fuel on the fire that, Payton started with the comments that he made.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really hard, especially when you go after the Nathaniel Hackett just in general, but then the Jets as well, talking about Hard Knocks and everything like that. Like that's completely unnecessary. You didn't need to do that, and maybe you do need to apologize to Robert Saleh for that particular thing. I don't think he needs to apologize to Nathaniel Hackett at all. Calling it the worst coaching job that we've ever seen in NFL history. Probably accurate. It was a disaster. The guy got fired after 15 games. Broncos were completely incompetent. They practically led the NFL in pre-snap penalties. It was a disaster. And again, speaking the truth, just sometimes hurts. We got Troy jumping in here though. Let's change gears really fast here. Troy jumping in, $10 super chat. Hey guys, hope Shelby Harris joins soon. Do you think that with Shelby Harris, Lancaster, Mike Purcell, and Matt Henningsen will be enough with Zach Allen and DJ Jones if we can avoid injuries? It could be a fun season for a change. Now, Eric, we've gone back and forth a couple of different times on this. I didn't necessarily think that it was a possibility for Shelby Harris to come back to Denver after what happened with the Russell Wilson trade. Him finding out, I believe it was on ESPN, that he was a part of the trade. They never even actually got the opportunity. Like he was already at the building, and he heard it was either on ESPN or on Twitter or something like that he was a part of the Russell Wilson trade just a year ago. So to me, I didn't think it was possible, but new information always coming out here. He did visit the Denver Broncos today. They kind of worked him out a little bit. What do you know, man?
Well, I mean, like, it makes sense. His family, even when he went to Seattle last year, his family stayed in Denver. That's where his family is. Couple weeks ago, or about a week ago or so, everybody believed that he was on the cusp of re-signing with Seattle. Maybe that's still in play. Denver just wanted to take a look, especially with the suspension coming for Uwazurike. They got to get somebody else in there. Even before the suspension of Uwazurike, they still needed another veteran in that room, in my opinion.
Yes.
Now, even more so, because now you're losing the potential of Uwazurike. Makes sense to bring in Shelby Harris. There's familiarity there with Vance Joseph. There's familiarity there with some of the other people on the team. It makes sense to take a look at him and try to see what you can do to bring him back. Obviously, it's just a workout. Maybe it leads to a signing. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the fact that, even though his family's in Denver, maybe the fact that he was at team facilities and found out on watching ESPN, maybe that is just some bad blood that he can't just overcome. Only time will tell. We'll see. But I do expect the Broncos at some point to add a defensive lineman. As for the question about, Harris, Lancaster, Purcell, Henningsen, with Allen Jones being enough, maybe. Lancaster doesn't inspire me with a lot of confidence. Henningsen depends on how he grows. Purcell, though, would be an upgrade over, Uwazurike and Henningsen and Purcell, like the three of them trying to be the main depth guys. So, I mean, possibly, but time will tell.
Yeah. And, Eric, you've come at me multiple different times for me saying this, and this is officially going to end my, I don't really want to call it like pounding the table but my stance on, moving on from Mike Purcell. Now you need to keep a player like that. When you don't have a high upside guy, and not that Uwazurike is like fit for the nose tackle. That's not really what he does the best, but you could at least try to put him in that situation. With him gone now, you need to have that interior defensive lineman, the run stuffer along the interior of the defensive line, a strong nose tackle. You really need to keep him around. The cap hit's not really all that bad. I believe it's right at $3.75 million or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but I mean, it's cheap enough to keep him around. The veteran leadership that he brings to the team, you need to have another experienced player along that defensive line. And quite honestly, I think they need to bring in two guys, whether it's Shelby Harris, Matt Ioannidis, both of them. Michael Brockers is definitely another name out there you could bring in potentially on a cheap deal as a veteran. You really have to bolster this defensive line group, because we were already questioning the depth coming into camp, and now you're missing a guy that has high upside potential. And quite honestly, I want to go on a little soapbox here really quickly, just because I disagree with the way that the NFL is going about these suspensions. I really do. With the Uwazurike, he was suspended for 1 year, meaning that the soonest that he can even apply for reinstatement to the league and have contact with team officials, teammates, anybody else in the NFL is July 24th, 2024. He's going to miss all of this season, all of the next offseason as well. And the Broncos still have roster adjustment that they have to make now and into the future. This to me is a bunch of garbage. Like, I understand you want to crack down on the integrity of the game and make sure that team that is very clear and a focused vision on these games are not fixed. We're not trying to ruin the integrity of the game. No one's throwing points or doing whatever they're going to do. But to make it a full year where you can't come back for a full year, to me, it's garbage, man. Suspend him for the season, get him out all the way through the Super Bowl, allow him to come back and work his way back into things after the season is over, work your way through the offseason program, and maybe we can see Uwazurike again. But as it stands right now, who knows what his future in the NFL looks like? Like, plain and simple.
No. Like, Denver's not going to cut him. No, he's going to get a shot next year with the Broncos. Like, kid's 25. He made a mistake gambling. Like, it's not going to be the end of his career. Like, come on now.
I'm not saying that it's going to be the end of his career. I'm saying it puts his career in jeopardy. It absolutely does. You're missing an entire year.
Like, especially when you sit there and you look at the fact that the NFL rules last year when it came to gambling were so unclear and messed up, they had to change them. They had to go back and fix them just a month ago. His career's not in jeopardy. He's not going to be done in the NFL. He's going to get a chance with the Broncos next year. Maybe that is his final shot. But come on now, saying that his career's basically done and trying to imply that his career's done over this for a 25-year-old guy, come on now.
Well, I'm not saying that it's that. Let's put it this way: it puts a big damper on his potential moving forward. Let's just put it that way, because the Broncos now have to.
Because if he gets out there and he shows greatness, no one will care. Not a single NFL team will care if he goes out there and plays great. Yeah, no one will care.
You're not wrong, and the NFL is one of those. You know, if you have the talent, they're going to overlook a lot of different things. But we're talking about a dude that was struggling to gain footing as a rookie. He's going to miss this entire next season as a developmental
year
player.
2 and year 3.
Yeah, and he's going to miss year 2 and year 3, or
yeah,
at least year 2.
Miss year 2.
At least year 2, and he was drafted to have that developmental time over his second year, and then now he's going to be going into year 3 missing a whole bunch of NFL coaching and strength and conditioning. He's going to have to work behind the scenes to be able to get it done. I'm not trying to doubt the guy and say that it's not possible for him to come back, so please don't twist my words. What I'm saying is it does put that into jeopardy. It absolutely does. Absolutely it does.
It doesn't.
It did the same thing for Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley was a first-round pick, a guy that was meant to be a successful player and showed success in the NFL level. Uwazurike played, 100 snaps last season? And he still has a long ways to go with this. It's just, I'm sorry you disagree with my opinion, but I do think it puts
No. What I'm saying is if he gets out of the NFL, it won't be because of the suspension. The suspension isn't what's going to end his career. It's not going to be what's pushing him out. And that is what you were implying. And for Calvin Ridley, wasn't he just traded for a first-round pick to the Jets or something, or to the Jaguars?
It was,
and he's killing it with the Jaguars.
It was a conditional second and conditional third, and like I said, he's been playing for years before that, and showed 3 seasons of high elite level of wide receiver play for the Atlanta Falcons before that all came down. You're going to get an opportunity. This dude's played 100 snaps.
And Uwazurike, who only has his rookie year when he was drafted for year 2, or year 3. If he doesn't make it, it's going to be because the game is too fast for him. He doesn't develop or whatever. But to imply that he is not going to make it, which is 100% what you did. You implied he's not going to make. You implied that he won't succeed. You implied that his career's in jeopardy because he got suspended for gambling, which was a stupid mistake. But let's not absolve the NFL of their blame for this, where they again had to go and correct it. Their wording for their gambling policy last year led to so many issues, which is why so many players are getting suspended. Uwazurike was a 4th-round pick. He was a 4th-round pick for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But he was drafted for year 2 or year 3. Yes, he's losing year 2, but he'll still get that year 3 potential. Yes, he's not going to be around the team. He's going to have to work on himself and everything. And that's going to be a true test of how much he wants it. But David McElrath comes with $10 donation.
Really what I was trying to get at there.
Saying, good evening, Broncos country. Lance, Eric, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 0, hashtag 12 and 5, hashtag Buckham times 3, hashtag MHH for life, and hashtag Denver Broncos for life. So anyways, then Michael Ronco came in with some stars saying, good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos and Buckham. Training camp today is the first day of training camp. There were some positive moments to say, but I'm always one that's I'd rather see it in the field. What you do in practice, especially unpadded practices the first day, like it's whatever to me. It's always more about what you do and show in preseason games, but there were some positive moments. Zach Allen got what would have been a sack on Russell Wilson. There were a couple pass breakups. Caden Sturds had that interception. Jarrett Stidham had a nice pass. Like there's a lot of positive for it for the Broncos team as they are looking at turning things around.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that the biggest takeaway I had, we obviously talked about it multiple different times here, is Javonte Williams specifically coming into training camp, not on the PUP list. And not only just doing positional drills, he was out there a little bit in 7-on-7s. He was taking care. Well, I say taking carries. He took a carry in 11-on-11, got a big roar of applause from the fans in attendance. So that's a good sign to me. And Eric, you and I both have talked about it several different times with Javonte Williams. And if he, like I said multiple times before, if Javonte Williams is ready to go for week 1, which at this pace, it does look like he's probably going to be ready for week 1. He was cleared for contact the other day, so he's going to be able to compete when they put the pads on and everything like that. If Javonte Williams comes out and starts week 1, I'm changing my Twitter handle to Javonte Williams fan _1. So that was a big thing for me. And another one that caught my attention was Tim Patrick as well, dude. Going out there, back-to-back catches in 7-on-7s to start the 7-on-7 period. He looked really well, caught a deep touchdown pass from Russell Wilson in 1-on-1. So the injured guys coming off, and the fact that they're out there on a snap count, they are definitely on a pitch count for according to Sean Payton. But the injured guys coming in, that was some big news to me, and I was a refreshing breath of fresh air, quite honestly.
Yeah, Gary Palmer came in with the $4.99, said, "Hey, Lance and Eric, go Broncos, buck 'em." Thank you, Gary. We appreciate the support. Howie Frickin' Day saying, "Evening, gentlemen. Was I the only one who held my breath when Russell finished his presser? Thank the Lords we didn't hear you know what." Yeah, I mean, like, it was nice to see, he's finishing his presser. And it was funny because I opened up Twitter, they're right at the end, and everybody, and like a lot of the Broncos media were like, he finished it with "Go Broncos." He finished it with "Go Broncos." Like every one of them thought that was noteworthy to clarify that he didn't say, you know what? So I found that pretty funny. And that's probably like, I don't know. That was good for a laugh for me today.
Yeah. I know this is kind of the new thing right now, but the hashtag Buckham thing is kind of getting old to me too. Can we not have a catchphrase for everything? Can we just say "Go Broncos" and be done with it? I know I'm not calling anybody out or anything like that. I'm just like the whole, after the whole "Let's Ride" thing, it's just tired. And as Scott pulls up here, he's got Mike Kliss on his Twitter account saying Russell Wilson passed on running the crowd with high fives, as he did all last year at camp. Didn't stay out and was signing autographs or anything like that. And as Scott has highlighted on the screen for everybody listening after the fact and not watching here live, he says, reading the room, this is lower key Russell Wilson. And I agree with that. And I think that we talked about it a couple different times, Eric, but with the way that this offseason has gone, Sean Payton, aside from the Jarrett Bell article on USA Today, it has been radio silence pretty much from Denver in terms of all the players, the coaches, their social media platform at Denver Broncos. Other than the helmet stuff that they just released a couple of days ago, it's been pretty much radio silence for the most part. Russell Wilson is not putting out nearly as many of the workout videos, hasn't been out and about, going to Monaco for the Grand Prix. To see him see this change shows me exactly what I was talking about. He's humbled. He was embarrassed by last season. He wants to get better moving forward. And this is Sean Payton's show, and he's making it so.
Well, and Sean Payton just yesterday, in that article, called out the fanfare that was last year throughout the offseason.
Yep.
Trotting out Russell Wilson so much. Like, obviously, it made sense at the time. Like, hey, we finally got a quarterback. Like, obviously, hindsight here. But at the time, they wanted to show off the shiny new toy. They wanted to show off the shiny quarterback. It made sense. And now Sean Payton's in town, and I would bet that 90% of this is Sean Payton saying, no, keep low, like, keep your head down, instead of, like, and not Russell Wilson being, oh, man, I don't want to be out there. Like, I'd put this more on Sean Payton getting control over Russell Wilson. Anthony Edwards comes in with the $9.99 donation saying, "Good evening, Eric and Lance. I think Ioannidis or Akeem Hicks would be better than Shelby. Thoughts?" It depends on what you're looking for. I think Akeem Hicks is essentially done. And Akeem Hicks is kind of redundant with what you have already.
Yeah.
Ioannidis, I think, is kind of on par with Shelby Harris. Shelby Harris, he's a little bit more of a pass rusher. Ioannidis is more of a run defender.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on what you're looking for. I think Ioannidis or Shelby Harris would be fine.
Yeah. Akeem Hicks to me is more that 1 to 3 technique when you need to have a 3 to 5 technique. And that's where Ioannidis fits in better than what Akeem Hicks does. And that's what Shelby Harris was great at as well, was playing that 3 and 4 eye technique in between guard and tackle. So to me, I would go Ioannidis or Hicks. With Shelby, obviously the pass rush potential is there, but go back and watch Shelby Harris. Even when he was with the Denver Broncos, a lot of the stuff that he was doing was a lot of cleanup work for guys like Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. He was getting a bunch of cleanup sacks. It's not like he's a great pocket pusher interior defensive lineman. He's a guy that can still get after it, and he's effective. He's definitely productive, especially in the running game, but he's not a guy, especially now that he's getting older. I don't think that he's a guy that you really want to depend on as that true like he's not Aaron Donald. He's not DeForest Buckner. He's not a guy like that. He's a quality player you want to have in your rotation. And I think that it would be a good signing for the Broncos if they can convince him to come back. But to me, I want a little bit more stoutness on the run defense, specifically because of all the questions on the edge right now. You've got Randy Gregory, you've got Frank Clark, who's a decent run defender. Baron Browning still has to show he's able to do it. Nick Badito, as we have all questioned him for multiple years. Jonathan Cooper's just kind of an okay guy. He can handle his own out there, but you need to have some better stoutness along the interior of this defensive line, especially against the run. So to me, Ioannidis would make more sense than Shelby Harris. Bring them both, though. If you're going to get one, you might as well try to get both of them, because like I said earlier, you need to have depth on this unit.
Yeah. Shelby Harris, I mean, he's had so many issues against the run, and they constantly stand out. And no, he's not Aaron Donald or DeForest Buckner or any of the guys like that, but he never was. He's a guy who was decent at getting pressure. A lot of his sacks ended up being cleanup sacks, but he could still get pressure on the opposing quarterback. I mean, he averaged for the last 4 years about 30 pressures a season, which is good for what his role would be. Especially in this defense. So it'd be fine. Like Ioannidis wouldn't be bad. As you said, better run defense, especially with all the questions that you have behind him for it. He's a guy that can eat up space and help the linebackers and edges flow to it. Either one, if not both, that'd be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get back to training camp here, because we got our good buddy Michael Ronquillo jumping in here, and he was talking about a guy that we've heard a bunch of different comments about. Running back Jaleel McLaughlin is one undrafted free agent player that I'm looking at during Broncos training camp. So Michael is tapping on to something that we heard from a guy, Zach Seegers at Mile High Sports, Cecil Lammy over at 104.3 The Fan. Both of those guys were touting Jaleel McLaughlin out there running around, showing off that speed, showing some flash and whatnot. Obviously, a lot of that work was against airs and against guys, undrafted free agents, guys probably not going to make this roster. But this dude brings a different gear to the running back position that they don't really have outside of Tyler Beatty. So this is really that last kind of training camp battle. Eric, this is something you talked about just a little bit ago. What did you think about Jaleel McLaughlin and the stuff you were able to see today?
I mean, with what I heard about, he seemed to have a pretty solid day, eating up on the guys that are practice squad candidates or not going to make it. But one thing that was pretty clear also from multiple people is that Tyler Beatty was the number 3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
It was P. Ryan Williams and Beatty, even over Jones. Excuse me. So it's always been for me of who's going to be that kind of home run hitter, Beatty or McLaughlin. I mean, it's the first day of camp, so a lot can change. But early sign is like the very, very early sign, the earliest it can be. It's Tyler Beatty's job to lose.
Yeah. I guess it's more interesting, like you said, with Tony Jones, Tyler Beatty, Jaleel McLaughlin, to see who's out there getting those third team snaps, the guy that's like showing the most flashes. And with McLaughlin being shouted out multiple different times from multiple different people, it wasn't just, Michael here. It wasn't just Cecil Lammy. It wasn't Zach Seegers. Like there was a couple of different people as well. Ryan Edwards, I think, had a tweet as well about him. So to see him getting some love out there, and it's hard, but again, it comes back to the clear 1 and 2 right now, and the biggest news of training camp, at least to my opinion right now, is Javonte Williams at number 2 right now, out there working as much as he possibly can. He did have a very big, large, bulky knee brace on and looked a little bit uncomfortable moving around out there in some of the change of direction stuff that they were doing. But for the most part, the fact that he's out there and actually able to do that stuff is a very good sign moving forward. So that was something that with McLaughlin coming in here, got to bring into the full picture of everything here. If McLaughlin does make this roster as the 3rd or even the 4th running back on the roster, good for him. Undrafted player out of Youngstown State. So very curious to see how he looks moving forward. We saw another young rookie from a smaller school last year in Montreal, Washington, take over the team by storm, especially in training camp, making big plays and everything. And look at how that disaster happened last season. As a punt returner, we barely even saw any time on the offense. So take everything you see right now, especially with these lower level roster guys, with a grain of salt, at least moving forward for a little while. Another big development.
Real quick, also,
go ahead.
Since you mentioned him, Montreal, Washington had a pretty good day today from what it seems to.
Yep.
Right. Again, and this also combines with McLaughlin, and I said it last year with the whole thing with Washington. Unpadded camp practices are so tilted towards speedy guys.
Mm-hmm.
It is so tilted towards them. So of course on those days they're going to look good.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, Scott and I, while you were kind of dealing with your computer and the technical issues you were having earlier, Scott and I mentioned the videos that Jane Slater and a bunch of Dallas Cowboys fans were tweeting out on Twitter earlier of Deuce Vaughn, undrafted rookie free agent out of Kansas State, running back, 5'5", 170 pounds, if that. Oh, that's right. They did draft him very late. Excuse me. Thank you for the correction there. Regardless, smaller guy out there. He looks like a child. Literally, he looks like a small toddler or a high school player out there running around. But there's multiple times where he's out in open space, or even when it's congested, they're just touching him up and letting him go, making him look a lot better than what he was. And you see that size out there, and it doesn't look good for him moving forward. I mean, he made some flashy plays, caught the football, broke a longer run, but put the pads on. And when he gets touched up with pads, he's probably not going to go very far. So just, again, take everything a little bit with a grain of salt.
Apparently Montreal, Washington muffed the punt today. I didn't see anything on that. I didn't see any video or anything. So
no,
I didn't know that. Everything that I saw about him was really positive.
Yeah, going again to Zach Seegers, who does a decent job putting out a bunch of training camp notes and everything, says that he looked like a training camp Hall of Famer out there. Looked really good. So you can only go by what's reported. Unfortunately, not able to attend practice. So we got to go with what we can actually see, which isn't very much right now. Not a lot of videos coming out from Denver, a bunch of media members, even the fans that were in attendance. It's kind of hard to dig your way through this. You got to go off of a lot of other opinions and kind of just report on what you can. So difficult to go through it right now. But with that being said, I want to move to the defensive side of the football here, because we got a lot of information, especially from guys like Caden Stearns, Damari Mathis, and Riley Moss, who all three, from the sound of it, had very good days out there today, Eric, specifically in 7-on-7 drills. Arguably the play of the day from pretty much everybody that was in attendance was the interception that Caden Stearns had in, I believe it was a 7-on-7 period. Russell Wilson was trying to target Greg Dulcich going down the seam. Justin Simmons was able to tip the ball up into the air, and Caden Stearns laid out to make a diving interception. Easily one of the biggest plays of the day so far. So big news there for Caden Stearns, who's fighting for that starting spot at opposite of Justin Simmons, man. Big excitement for me. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's great. I mean, I was a big fan of Caden Stearns when he was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I had him a little bit higher than where he went. But the issue is that he played sparingly as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And while he did make some plays, primarily in the Ravens game, where he had the multiple plays, there was no consistency to it. And outside of the game, he wasn't great. And last year, there were a lot of issues to start, and then he got hurt. He's played less than 600 snaps, so I've always questioned him. It's very much about the growth that he can show as a player and everything like that. And so, I mean, it's good to hear that he's jumping in, like his first time really back and doing something in team drills, and he manages to go get the interception. That's very promising.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And like you said, that rookie season, I believe it was actually the Jets game. He had an interception off of Zach Wilson. You and I were at that game, the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. He had another one that later that season, and then had two last season before he ended up getting hurt. I think that was the Ravens game you were alluding to. So he's shown the ability to get around the football and actually take it away and, create turnovers. And that was something he did at Texas as well. He's a very versatile player, can play in the single high position. He can play in too high stuff, middle of the field open. He's also versatile enough to drop down into the box, physical enough to play in the run. So very interesting player moving forward for this Vance Joseph defense. On the outside of him, though, one of the bigger developments that we saw was the play of Damari Mathis, who I had seen that he had a couple of pass breakups. You'd seen that he had one at least in the 7-on-7 drills early, like very early. It was the very first pass breakup of the defense's day to day from Damari Mathis. And then rookie Riley Moss, who's out there competing and showing that he actually kind of belongs as well, getting a PBU in 7-on-7s as well. So the young guys playing in the secondary starting to show up, man. And I'm starting to get pretty excited about the way that the secondary is going to look.
Yeah, I mean, Damari Mathis again, like he was a guy that I liked last year, cornerback, out of Pittsburgh. Like, was a big fan of what he did there and how it would transition over. Didn't have the best start. Everybody remembers that Chargers game where they just absolutely picked on him, but he slowly got better as the season went on. Like, it still wasn't great. His end of season was still overhyped, so it was always about the growth. And he's being thrust into a huge role, being the corner opposite Patrick Surtain. So it's good to see him have this pass breakup in coverage, even though it was on 7-on-7s. Means he's in the right position. Mm-hmm. Obviously, things can change when you can be a little bit more physical there at the line and everything. And again, it's only practice still, so not trying to hype him up too much over it.
Yeah. And like we've said multiple times now, it's an unpadded practice. There's not a whole lot of contact going on out there. So you really got to kind of take everything you're seeing with a grain of salt. I mean, especially with the running backs, Jaleel McLaughlin, the guys out there in the secondary who you're not allowed to be as physical as you probably could be when you get pads on, obviously. But even, you're going one-on-one against your own guys, like Cortland Sutton had an open rep where he caught a deep pass down the left sideline from Russell Wilson. Like you're not seeing a whole bunch of the super competitive aspect of this right now. So again, grain of salt. They're very early into this process, and I'm very excited to see how it's going to go moving forward because apparently the way that Sean Payton has taken over this roster and the way that he's taken over this organization, you're starting to see a higher tempo pace in this practice. It's not so laid back. Everything is very organized. You're trying to see, you're starting to see how a properly coached team looks. Day one is always the hardest one to really get a judge on. We'll get here day 3, day 4 when they put the pads on and start cracking helmets together. It's going to be a lot more fun over those next couple of days, but you can at least kind of get an idea what this team's looking like. I want to go back quickly, though, Eric, to a couple of the comments that we heard from Sean Payton in the Jarrett Bell piece, and specifically in the first opening paragraph, essentially from Jarrett Bell. One of the first things that Sean Payton told him in the interview was, I'm going to be pissed if this is not a playoff team. I think that this team has potential to push towards the playoff. I think 10-7 is probably right around where they're going to be at. And I know that it's obviously very early and you can't really glean a whole lot out of this, but I don't think that I've asked you this question based on what you think of this roster, what you think of the coaching staff moving forward and all the changes that have been made there at Dove Valley. What do you think of the Broncos' chances of actually pushing towards a winning record and potentially even getting into a playoff spot?
I'm not very hopeful for a playoff spot from this Broncos team. Okay. I think they'll be better last year. It's hard to be. I think this will be the best that we see from them since the Super Bowl year, really. Mm-hmm. But I'm just not sure if they are able to do quite enough so quickly to get into the playoffs. There's still a lot of issues that they have that need to be fixed, mm-hmm. that are getting overlooked. It's no team can come in and fix all their issues, especially all the issues the Broncos had last year in one season. Mm-hmm. But I expect better. I expect maybe on the cusp of a playoff spot, but not quite crossing that line.
Yeah. I think the biggest question that I have, obviously, interior offensive line, specifically what's going to happen with Lloyd Cushenberry and Alex Forsythe, and we'll see what happens more with that when we put the pads on and really go at it here. The other one, obviously, we've talked about it multiple different times, is the defensive line and the ability to generate pass pressure without having to rush linebackers from the second level. And we all know Vance Joseph likes to do that. I think it was 36.7% blitz percentage last season, 25.1% pressure percentage. Like, he wants to get after the quarterback, and he does so by bringing extra pressure. It's going to be nice, though, if you can get some pressure from the front four whenever they do not send the extra guys, the linebacker safeties from the second level. So that, to me, is the biggest thing, is can you generate enough pass pressure to allow these guys to get to the quarterback, disrupt some throwing lanes, get their hands on some footballs, and help the secondary out. Like, that's a big thing here. And I want to grab this comment from Todd here really fast, because he's talking about Shelby Harris. We're going back to this really fast. He said that Shelby was with a new team and showing he supports them now and not his old quarterback. That is what it should be. And he also, it's not the right one that I wanted to grab. It's this one here, saying that it was only last year that Shelby's production fell off. Coming back to VJ's scheme could help him regain some production. Eric, I want your thoughts on this, because when you watched Shelby Harris go from Vance Joseph to then Vic Fangio, where they slid him a little bit inside and started playing in more the 0-1 technique. Speak to this just a little bit and what Shelby Harris was able to do in Vance Joseph's scheme, specifically as a 3 and 4 eye technique.
Well, I mean, he wasn't great. He only played in it really 1 year. Well, I guess it was 2 years. Sorry, 2017 and 2018. And those were, like, of years that he was actually playing, those were 2 of his worst years. Vance Joseph was using him predominantly as a run defender and not a pass rusher, and that's where his run defense was, such an issue. And then Vance Joseph kind of flipped that, and you saw him more as a pass rusher. And as far as production falling off last year, it really didn't. Like, sure, he didn't have the sacks, but it was one of his better years as a run defender, and it was the second highest year in total pressures that he picked up. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why he had less sacks last year was, again, because of how the way they're just kind of using him. So I think going back to Shelby Harris's scheme, or to Vance Joseph's schemes, Shelby Harris can still, be decent, especially with Vance Joseph having a clear way on how to use him. But my thing is the role they're looking for is more of a run defender to fill in that Deshaun Williams role last year, and that's not Shelby Harris. So what would they do? Would they flip Zach Allen over there? Because Zach Allen is a far better run defender, or flip that role to Zach Allen, and then use Shelby Harris, more of the pass rusher, who is not as much space eating, but more of an attempt at gap shooting against the run. Mm-hmm. That would probably be my guess, is what their plan would be.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because that was something I was going to say is, in Vance Joseph defense, where you need that front side defender to be able to eat blockers and play with strength at the point of attack, that's never been Shelby Harris's game. He's been that first step, get off, get skinny if you possibly can, get some leverage, get underneath and try to work the bull rush. He's not really a twitchy guy, not a super explosive player coming out of the blocks. So it's an interesting fit. I think I agree with you for the most part. You're probably going to be using him more as a rotational pass rusher than you are going to see him as a true 3-down interior defensive lineman. You're probably going to see Zach Allen be that guy. You're probably going to see DJ Jones on there, maybe Matt Henningsen as well, Mike Purcell, having Harris as that rotational pass rusher on the interior defensive line. Obvious pass rushing situations is definitely going to be the role for him moving forward. Let's see here. I want to run through some more of these comments. Ooh, here we go. We got one from Mark Hoynak. It's been a while since I've seen this name in here. So, Mark, thank you for joining us. Talking about Randy Gregory, saying that if Randy Gregory can stay healthy, our playoff chances go way up. This is kind of hard to disagree with. And according to multiple different reports, specifically Brandon Stokely at 104.3 The Fan earlier today on his radio show gave him his star of training camp day number 1, saying that he looked good out there in the limited reps that he was able to do. Very disruptive. What do you think on Randy Gregory, man?
I mean, can he stay on the field? That's what it's always been about. When he's on the field, we know he can play, but he just can't stay on the field. Yeah. So going to the question here, if he can stay healthy, our playoff chances go way up. It does. Yeah. But how realistic is it that we get, let's see, 10 or more games out of him? I don't think it's very realistic to get that out of him.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you pay a guy $70 million over 5 seasons, you're expecting him to be a full 16-game starter. Like that we can rehash how bad of a move that was, guys. I put it up there in my 5 worst moves that could have George Payton on the hot seat going into 2023. This is one of them. You've got to have a player out there that caliber who is a high quality player when he's on the field. He's just never available, and that's a problem for a guy that you paid that much money to. So,
and as Harold Jean comes in and says, disruptive against 2 backup tackles doesn't faze me. Yeah, no Garrett Bowles, no Mike McGlinchey, so anything from the edges, like, take it even with a more grain of salt. Somebody asked about Russell Wilson having a bad day. I didn't hear he had a bad day. Everything I've seen except for the interception has been mostly positive. But like he was running for his life a lot. That was one thing that was made pretty clear. And when you have backup tackles out there, it's going to happen. Cam Fleming is fine, but who was the other backup tackle? Was it Quinn Bailey, or was it one of the many other guys whose names I can't remember?
Yeah, and I don't know. I didn't see any reporting on that from anybody out there. So without being there to see it for myself, I would assume it was probably Bailey. That's just the direction that I would guess, given his play last season and the fact that he is, the tackle guard swing guy that you have potentially as a depth player on this roster. So that would be where my first thought would go. But again, Fleming played well at right tackle last season. He filled in pretty well for Garrett Bowles on the left side as well. But like you said, I mean, he's a guy that you want to have as a swing tackle. You need him as a pinch, but you don't want to have him out there all the time. And like you said, everything that I'd seen about Russell Wilson was the obviously the 70-yard touchdown where he got away from Zach Allen after he was sacked and then ran forever. And essentially one of those unpadded situations where he's just going to run, finish the play out, and make it look good. There was other multiple different times where he was scrambling around, throwing on the run, looked very accurate in the 7-on-7 stuff. Did have the interception where Justin Simmons made a hell of a play and Caden Stearns took it away. But everything that I had seen was Russell Wilson had a pretty darn good day. I think he was 7 for 7 in 7-on-7, quite honestly, on the first time that they went on that go around. So I'm not sure where you heard that, Harold, but it's all right. Again, you've got a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. And unless you were there in person to see it right now, it's kind of hard to disseminate exactly what happened out there on the field today. So again, take everything we're talking about with just a little bit of a grain of salt. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, we did hear multiple different times about Jarrett Stidham out there, backup quarterback for the Broncos. He did have a very long catch, a long pass that was caught by Lil Jordan Humphrey down the right sideline against Riley Moss. And Moss apparently was playing perfect coverage. It was just a very good throw from Stidham. A couple other different opportunities where he did have one pass broken up and then one that was nearly intercepted. But for the most part, Stidham looked sharp out there. Eric, what did you think? Or what did you hear, I guess, is the thing there.
I didn't hear much else. I mean, he looked pretty sharp. There were a couple of his passes were broken up. He had a near interception where he underthrew Jaleel McLaughlin that Seth Benson kind of jumped almost picked off. That was about it. Yeah.
Yeah, K-Hop coming in. Didn't Russ get a 70-yard touchdown? Yeah, he was sacked on that play. According to everybody that was there, it was either going to be a sack or potentially a strip sack if they had pads on it. It was full contact. I want to get this one really fast because Michael, such a great dude and great with support and everything. He says, let's send prayers for quarterback Joe Burrow after he injured his calf during the Bengals training camp. Yeah, that was a super unfortunate deal. I think he was actually coming into training camp for the Bengals with already kind of an issue going on with his calf. He was wearing a sleeve at the particular time, went rolling out on 11-on-11 drills and came up limping, was carted off, calf strain. Going to be out multiple weeks from the sound of it. So prayers up to Joe Burrow, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And hopefully the Broncos don't have to deal with that. Like that's one thing that I don't want to say necessarily nervous about with the new physical up-tempo mentality of Sean Payton, but I did have a lot of criticism for Nathaniel Hackett about what he did and not having these guys go nearly as hard as they probably should have gone throughout camp last season. So hopefully the Broncos can come out of this on the other side with no injuries. And at least for today, we're on the right side of the positive side of things. So yeah, prayers up to Joe Burrow. What else do we got here? Trying to find something. Guys, get your comments in here really fast. We're not going to have much comment flow. We're probably going to get out of here in just a few minutes. Eric, is there anything pressing you wanted to get to?
No, I mean it's training camp, and as you said, and as Dylan's saying in it, everything from training camp, take with a grain of salt. There's limit on contact, even when they're fully padded. Like for certain parts of practice, there's still a limit on what you can do that the NFL has placed on NFL teams. And how many times do we see these training camp studs get to the preseason and then just fall apart? Like every year, multiple guys. Like preseason games, that's where you come away with the most takeaways. Who can hang, who can't. It's how Matt Henningsen last year really made his way onto the roster. He absolutely killed it in preseason. Well, McTelvin Ajim and Jonathan Harris struggled. Just the way it is.
Yeah. Michael Ronquillo jumping in here on Facebook, throwing some stars around. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate your support, buddy. Saying, great show tonight, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos and Buckham. Thank you, Michael. We definitely appreciate your support, as always, not only here, but across all of the Mile High Huddle podcast platforms. Everybody we know definitely appreciates your support down there in Tucson, showing that Broncos country is not a geographical location. It is, in fact, a hashtag state of being. Harold's asking about Cush. Again, don't know much. Didn't see a lot on the offensive line. The one big news, noteworthy piece of news was, like Eric kind of alluded to earlier, Mike McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles did not participate in practice today. McGlinchey was actually out yesterday as well for a personal matter. Didn't get any update on what his status was for today. We just know that he was not out there. But that's probably going to be typical for right now. Sean Payton did kind of, allude to how they're going to value some of these players that are coming off of season-ending surgeries from last season are going to have, pitch counts. Some veteran guys are going to have some more pitch counts. And then the tier 3 is going to be the players that are really competing for this roster. So with McGlinchey, with Garrett Bowles, probably some veteran day rest there. McGlinchey, not sure what his personal matter is, and hopefully he can get that resolved, get out here to camp, and we can see what he looks like in a Denver Broncos uniform. But for the most part, didn't hear much about the offensive line in general, other than Russell Wilson running for his life, which doesn't bode well for the backups out there. So,
yeah, I mean, like Cam Fleming was supposed to, we thought we were hyped for the signing because outside of him, the tackles were just nothing but questions. Hopefully Cam Fleming wasn't the biggest issue out there today because he's the backup swing tackle. So you kind of want him, even in practice, being limited. But on that note too, is the unpadded practices with the limited contact doesn't do well for the blockers. They like the speedy guys tend to, steal the show a little bit. The blockers will often struggle when in limited contact without pads.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And like you said, speedy, twitchy guys that are able to move quickly and rely on that speed to bend, the ability to get around the edge at the edge position, speedier interior defensive linemen with faster hands, where you're not going against the physicality. You're not grinding against each other. And even when they do grind against each other here in camp, it's probably only going to be about 75% roughly. You're not going to see full-blown hitting until we get into the preseason games. And that's really where you're going to learn your takeaways. But I want to ask you this question, piggybacking off of that last statement here, Eric. What can you take away from these training camp practices as much as possible? I mean, it's hard, obviously, not being there, not seeing it, be able to watch the tape back and forth over and over again. But when you're out there and if you have the opportunity to really get some good footage, what can you take away from some of these practices?
Techniques. If you're doing you got to be showing the right technique outside of pads, in pads, like defensive backs, wide receivers, defensive linemen, like so many guys, you got to look at the technique. Are they showing growth? And then on top of that, are they showing an understanding of what they're being asked to do?
Yes.
First day of training camp, first few days of training camp, a lot of it is just working on making sure the installation of the offense or the defense is down. So you really got to stand out and show that, hey, I know what my job and my role is supposed to be on this play. So it's just things like that, things that you can often work on the sidelines as well, like in the film room, the understanding of it, the techniques, just that kind of stuff. Obviously, things can still change a little bit once you put pads on in full contact, because when you're a pass rusher, you get hurt a certain way, it's going to change the way that you react. You're going to go to a different pass rush move. But it still doesn't matter if your technique is still like showing up and being consistent with it.
Yeah. I heard a very interesting comment from Orlando Franklin earlier today, former Denver Broncos right tackle, talking about, and he was talking with Chad Brown, former Pittsburgh Steeler defensive end, who played for 15 years in the NFL, had 98 total sacks. So very experienced, very savvy veteran players, talking a little bit of shop going into training camp earlier today. And that was exactly what their sentiment was the first things that you're really trying to focus on is, do you actually understand your job? If you know where you're supposed to line up, you know what you're supposed to do, you understand what your job is on this particular play. That's really one of the first things you're looking for. And then you can work the technique in. If you understand what you're supposed to do, then you can really hone in that technique and you can really kind of divulge between the two players right now. If you don't understand what you're doing, your technique's going to be terrible and you're going to look just bad. If you at least know what you're doing, you can be out there and a coach can work with you on that technique and really guide you into the offense or the defense in general. And the last thing is, just quickly, last thing right now, if you're hearing about struggles on the offensive side of the football, that is 100% to be expected in training camp, especially early on. Defenses will always be further along in their installation and further along in their preparedness for training camp than offenses will be. It's just the natural balance of the NFL. Defenses are, I don't want to say easier to learn, but they are less complicated than offenses in general. So you're going to see a lot of, the offense had a bad day today. They looked a little bit out of sorts and whatnot. That's to be expected. So don't panic and don't freak out that Russell Wilson had a bad day, threw 3 interceptions. Well, do you know if that rookie wide receiver ran the right route on that particular play? Do you know if so-and-so made it's set up for defenses to succeed earlier, I guess is the way I'm trying to go with this.
On the same note, if Russell also throws 3 touchdowns, how could it be that, the safety didn't rotate?
It very well could be. Yeah.
Did that argument go the best way? I agree with what you're saying. It is tilted towards the defense in general, outside the speedsters. But the biggest reason for that is because the limitations put on that the offensive line can't do.
Yep.
Which brings me to this question here from Joseph here, saying they shouldn't have the offensive lineman doing these non-tackle drills, sitting in the cafeteria eating and then going to the gym and working out. You still need them out there on the field because they still got to be showing that they can do their thing. And it's not like they can't not touch the defensive lineman. They just have to be careful with it, and it's just limited contact. But you still got to see if, like, on this play, and they're supposed to be combo blocking, are they doing it? Is their technique still, like, the basis of their technique, is it still there? Are they pulling? If they're pulling, are they staying tight enough to the line, or are they drifting a little bit? There's still a lot that you can see from this with the offensive linemen that you want to see now to start correcting. So you still got to have them out there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. With that, guys, I think we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. Want to give a couple of quick shout outs. First things first, to Ernie Mays, big follower of everybody here at Mile High Huddle. Happy belated birthday to Ernie. And then we got Joseph Malinowski in the house as well, saying that his birthday here is in a couple days. So happy birthday to you as well. Want to shout out everybody that was in the show tonight. Obviously, we got Todd, Dylan, Kyle, we've got Orange Bucky in the house, Michael Ronquillo, Kevin Gray, Austin, Jeff Noyes, William Hayes, a lot of the same guys we see every single week. Regardless, want to shout out everybody. Mara Danita over on Twitch, want to give you a shout out as well. Hopefully I said that name correctly, saying football is officially back. Let's get it. I am excited and ready to move on to actual football. Hopefully we'll get some pads cracking here soon. But with that, guys, I want to get us moving forward and getting us out of here. Follow us on Twitter, please, by finding me at LanceS_MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Also, guys, while you're at it, please make sure you guys are following at Mile High Huddle. That is the mother account where you guys find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos, any training camp updates that we get from Luke Patterson. He's going to be boots on the ground every single day at training camp and credentialed, I believe, for the Rams joint practices here in a couple of weeks. So make sure you guys are following at Luke Patterson LP as well, to make sure you get all of those updates. Anything regarding the Broncos, you're going to find it there. Facebook supporters, make sure you go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. It's a great way to just, incorporate yourself into this wonderful Mile High Huddle community. Get onto the super fan group. We join everybody in the conversation in there as well. So make sure you guys are a part of both of those Facebook pages. And guys, if you're not financially able to do so in terms of super chats, hitting the merch tent, anything like that, we understand. We get it. Times are tough out there. It's just rough. But you guys can all be great supporters of the show by doing the 3 things at the bottom of the screen here. Subscribe wherever you guys are watching this to Mile High Huddle, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify after the fact. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. It helps out a lot. Like every video, article, anything you see on social media, please like that and then share it. If you love it, get it in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible, because without your guys' support, we could not do what we do best, which is cover the Denver Broncos. Now, Eric, interesting show. A lot of fun there in the beginning, getting fired up, going back and forth, but good conversation. We brought out a lot. Lawrence Rivera jumping in with some stars here at the bell. Now, Eric, I want your last opinion here, man. Any last words before we get out of here?
No, I just hope everybody has a safe weekend. Stay safe. Todd says, love the passion, Eric. Thank you. Like, it's just something I was passionate about, and Lance speaking poorly, brought it out of me. But no, like, and so I saw somebody sit there and said, it's like, I was a big fan of Wazirike, but that's not why I'm defending him. And it's not even really a defense of him, really.
No.
It's just the situation was dumb. The NFL put players in a bad situation because they weren't clear with the rules.
Right.
And the fact that, like, kid made a mistake. He'll get a second chance and he deserves it. Whether he does that, if he can show that growth and everything, like, fine, it's whatever, but it's on him. Like, next year at this time when training camp's starting, he'll still be with the Broncos and we'll get an idea about how much growth he's in. If he shows up at 350 pounds, then fine, whatever. The suspension was the killer of his career, but it's all about what he does from it and where he goes from here.
Right. And just to clarify my comments on that, and I wasn't trying to say that, this is like his career is over because of this, but it makes it a lot harder for him to continue on with his career is the biggest thing, because you're missing this season, you're missing the offseason program, and you're coming in cold right at the beginning of training. Does a
rookie or second year player who tears his ACL, is it the same thing?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. If you miss all that time and you miss the coaching and everything, I think it puts not necessarily your career in jeopardy, but it makes the hill a hell of a lot steeper to climb to actually get back to where you were and what your potential is moving forward. And Wazirike, I think he's super talented. Don't get me wrong. I loved him coming out of Iowa State. As I did a great film breakdown on him at Mile High Huddle, and I was super excited for him as a rookie. He did show some flashes. But again, he was a 4th-round pick for a reason. He's still got a long ways to grow, and missing all of that time now is definitely going to make it more difficult for him to have a quality opportunity going into year 3. I guess that's probably the better way of saying that. He's going to get a shot. He's got a long ways to go to be able to come back from this, though. That's the big point of my argument there.
And to be fair, like, part of the reason why he was a 4th-round pick was he was going from being basically an edge at Iowa State to being an interior defensive lineman.
Yep.
Completely different things. Anyways, Wesley comes in. Just want to call this out real quick. Says, also, didn't love Erick's takes when I started listening to this pod. And first, now I respect him. Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I know my takes aren't for everyone. It's part of the job. You can't make everyone happy. I know that I've kind of have a reputation of being cynical. It's just how I am. But I appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the comment. And thank you for joining us. It's the first time I remember seeing your name in the chat, so thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Wesley, and hopefully we didn't scare you off. Eric and I do that every now and again where we get heated with each other. We go back and forth, but it may seem like we don't like each other, we don't respect each other, but Eric's one of my best friends. I've invited him to be a part of my wedding over a year ago. He's invited me to be a part of his in the wedding party as well. Yeah, but still, I mean, yeah, like Eric and I are really good friends, and we argue with each other behind the scenes as well. So don't take what you see with us screaming at each other here on a show as any sort of disdain for each other or anything like that. This is how we actually work together very well. So with that, guys, want to leave you all. Oh, go ahead.
I hope I'll see a lot of you guys at the game for the Green Bay Packers, October 22nd. Hope to see you guys there at the meet and greet.
Yep. One quick last announcement. Chad didn't actually get to it. I have my third piece coming up. The full breakdown. I actually broke down what happened following George Payton's decision to take Pat Surtain over Justin Fields with the 9th overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft. Should be coming later this evening. So if you guys are interested in all of that, make sure you guys are paying attention to milehighhuddle.com and on Twitter at milehighhuddle. Want to give that a quick shout out. With that, guys, so we got to get out of here. We are running a little bit long. You all stay safe. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. As always, go Broncos. And please get back with us on Twitter and let's enjoy this conversation a little bit further. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.